So let's talk about Minneapolis. There's a whole community there, a really thriving one, that's living under this growing shadow of fear, the fear of being suddenly deported. Today, we're going to dive into how politics, history, and just, personal stories are all colliding in this crisis that's happening right now. And this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Imagine building your entire life, your memories, your whole identity in one place, only to have to face the idea that it could all just be erased. You see, this isn't just some abstract political debate. For the people involved, it's deeply, deeply personal. They don't know any other home. All right, so to really get what's going on, we've got to look at the actual atmosphere on the ground. And if you could sum up the feeling in the city's Somali community right now in just one word, that word would be panic. And this fear, it's not spreading through official news reports or anything like that. No, this is a grassroots kind of panic. It's moving through social media, it's being announced in mosques, it's in whispered warnings passed from one neighbor to another. It's like a silent alarm that's just ringing across the entire community. And look, these are not some far-off abstract worries. These are real, concrete instructions for how to survive in this new reality. The fear is showing up in really tangible ways, right? Kids are wondering if their parents are going to be home when they get back from school. Families are literally being torn apart during what should be routine check-ins with ICE. The whole fabric of daily life, it's just frayed by this constant, grinding uncertainty. Now, to really feel the weight of this threat, it is so important to understand something. This is not a new community. We're talking about people with deep, long-standing roots in Minnesota, roots that they've built over decades. For a lot of folks, their journey started decades ago, fleeing a brutal civil war. A really big wave of immigrants came over in the early 90s, just looking for safety and a chance to rebuild their lives. And over the years, that's exactly what they did. They created one of the largest, most vibrant Somali communities in the entire United States. And yeah, we're not talking about a small group of people here. We are talking about a community of over 100,000 people. These are your neighbors, your doctors, business owners, teachers. They pay taxes. They're a huge part of Minnesota's economy and its culture. This quote, it just really captures the original promise of what their new home was supposed to be. It speaks to a time when they felt welcomed, when they found safety and opportunity in a place that, at first, must have felt so foreign. It's such a stark contrast to the climate of fear they're dealing with today. Okay, so this whole situation didn't just appear out of nowhere. To really understand why these enforcement actions are happening, we have to look at the other side of the story, the counter-narrative. We're talking about the political rhetoric and the specific allegations that are fueling this crackdown. So a huge threat here is a legal term called denaturalization. What is that? Well, it's the process that can literally strip a naturalized person of their U.S. citizenship. And the whole basis for it is usually an accusation that they got their citizenship through some kind of fraud. And if that happens, it makes them vulnerable to deportation. So where are these allegations coming from? Well, they're popping up from a few different places. The reports of a major fraud scheme, claims that a huge number of certain visas are fraudulent, and then you have these high-profile political accusations, like the ones against Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, alleging immigration fraud. Now, whether these narratives are true or not, what they do is create this massive cloud of suspicion that hangs over the entire community. What's interesting is that this crisis has also brought some deep tensions within the broader Black community to the surface. On one hand, you have some Somali leaders calling for solidarity, saying, hey, we are all Black. But then you have others in the Black American community who point to past statements like, I'm not Black, I'm Somalian, and see it as, an alliance of convenience. This kind of fracture in the relationship, it really weakens the community's ability to stand together against these deportation threats. So what happens when you mix a community's deep-seated fear with these really powerful accusations? Well, you get a toxic, volatile environment. You get what you can only call a climate of fear. And that brings us to a really critical question, right? How does all this political talk, all this suspicion, actually transform into a weapon? A weapon that can destabilize thousands of lives. Well, it seems to happen in a cycle. First, you see the political rhetoric heat up. Then, enforcement gets more intense, and maybe it's not even about justice anymore, but about looking tough politically. And that, of course, triggers widespread panic, and it totally disrupts daily life. And the final step? Democracy itself starts to weaken. Because when an entire community is just trying to survive, public compassion starts to fade.
and it becomes a lot easier for injustice to happen again and again.
When you step back, what's happening in Minneapolis really forces all of us to face a huge fundamental question about the very idea of America. And that question is, who actually gets to feel secure here?
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Who in America gets to belong without question? And who is forced to live with this constant, nagging threat that their belonging is conditional, that it could be taken away at any moment? That single question, it's at the absolute core of this entire crisis. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. When an entire community of over 100,000 people is silenced by fear, what do we all lose? It's not just a loss for them, it's a loss for the entire country. Because when fear becomes policy, it sets a dangerous precedent that could one day affect any of us. The real question we have to ask ourselves is, what happens when we just stop listening to the voices of people living in fear?